Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the Man of Steel.
Hey there, comic fans. How you doing there? Bullseye Bob here, and welcome to Everything Comics. Of course, this is another episode of Having Comics with My Coffee. This is the 24th episode, and I'm really glad that you're here with me. As you can see, I'm here live and in living color from the Refuge Coffee House. Of course, that's at 9217 Southeast Foster Road here in Portland, Oregon, and it is the official coffee house of Everything Comics. And I'm just so glad, like I said last week, to be back here, and thank you for joining me today. This will be kind of a different show, as you'll see as we go along, but first I want to talk about the Refuge really quick. This place became pretty famous the last couple of days. The ex-mayor of Portland, who is running for the city council, he came in here. Actually, it's the second time he's been in here, and he went live on Facebook, and he basically let everybody know this is the place that you want to be. This is a great place that you want to come and support. And it was really cool seeing my friends on TV, or not TV, but at least live with somebody who has so many followers, and I thought that's really cool. I was really proud of them, and so they got a little publicity yesterday, which was really cool, which helps. I mean, during this time, like I told you last week, just like anybody else, they're trying to stay afloat. And so again, I wanted to let you know I'm going to put the link for Refuge Coffee House down in the description of the video. Do me a favor, go check out their website. They have swag, they have coffee that you can buy, they have all kinds of different things that they're selling to help them stay afloat until this whole thing that shall not be named is over. And so if you could do that, I really appreciate it. I love these guys. They're a big part of what helps me to bring this show. And I would just ask that if you're so led, please do whatever you can to buy something off their website. That would be really great. I'm really trying to get some support for them as much as I can. And for anybody out there who is trying to run a business during this time, I know this is a trying time. And any way that we can support our local businesses, we want to go ahead and do that as much as possible. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. This particular show is going to be a little bit different. I know that we finally have some new comics that came out, but I didn't buy any. The deal was DC only came out with, I think, 4 books this week, and all 4 of those books are not books that I'm reading. I'm not like Robbie from Pop Culture Philosophers, who can catch up on everything you need to catch up on, and so in order to be able to competently talk about those books. And so I didn't buy any of those DC books. I know that there was some Marvel books that came out digitally, but most of those I wasn't reading anyway, and I didn't feel like I wanted to just buy Ant-Man #4 just to review on the show. So I didn't do it. So this show is not going to have any new comic reviews. Instead, I'm going to be reviewing older comics that during this thing that shall not be named, that I've been reading, that I've been catching up on and checking out. I'll probably do that the next couple of shows. And so not too many announcements this week. I just wanted to send everybody a reminder out that, of course, I am on another show. On the Comics with Bueller channel, I am on the new Coffee and Comic Show. At some point, we're going to stop calling it the new Coffee and Comic Show and just call it the Coffee and Comic Show, but I'll leave that up to him. But it's my favorite part of the week. That's where my buddy Bueller and I get together and we talk about comics, and we talk about all kinds of different subjects, and we usually let your comments drive the conversation. If you haven't been there, go check it out. We drop our video every Monday morning at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's always good. This last week, we got together. It was an awesome time, and the discussion topic for this week is Marvel going digital. They're taking some of their books and not bringing actual print out on those books, but basically taking and releasing them digitally instead, taking a small part of their line and saying, we're not going to put these out on print anymore. How do you feel about that? What do you think the impact of that will be? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do me a favor, go to Comics with Bueller, look at the last new Coffee and Comic Show video, which dropped this last Monday. Leave a comment on that video, and we'll be talking about this next Monday. And that's pretty much it. Those are my announcements. Again, I'm really glad to be here at the Refuge again. It's been so long since I've been able to just come in and hang out at the best coffee shop in Portland, the Refuge. And but here we go. I'm going to talk about some of the older books that I've been reading here lately. And before we do that, I want to show our cover of the week. And our cover of the week this week comes from Justice League Odyssey number 20. Now, I know that if any of you watched the New Coffee and Comic Show, my pick of the week was the Metal Men cover by George Perez, and that is a great cover. But as I've been looking at the artwork on these things, I really think this Justice League Odyssey number 20, and especially what I'm talking about is the variant cover by Scan. That is a great picture by Cyborg. I'm showing the picture here to you now. Check that out, all in its glory. And that's my cover of the week. So going on to the next, we're going to go ahead and get into our books, and here are the reviews. So just before the pandemic happened, I got an A-OK in the mail from Two Gun Pedro. Pew pew! And the brother really gave me a lot of great comics, a lot of great Daredevil comics, and especially one that I had never read before, which was the full series of Daredevil Reborn. Now, it's funny because he was looking for stuff that I've never read before, and it just so happens that is a series that I'd never read before. And one of the reasons I never read it was because it's no secret, I didn't really enjoy Andy Diggle's run on Daredevil. And so I wasn't apt to really pick up that miniseries when he was done with the book. I was actually kind of glad he was done writing it. And but here, Two Gun Pedro gave me the series, and I'm like, I got to read it now. And so that's what I did. And so we're talking about the 4-issue miniseries called Daredevil Reborn, which came out from January to April of 2010. 2011. And of course, that's by Marvel Comics. It was written by Andy Diggle, and the art is by David Galifianakis. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, I'm really bad at some of these names, but anyway, I just want to say that to Two Gun Pedro, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it. Again, your A-OK was, I think, the best A-OK anybody's ever gotten ever. I was so blown away by it, and I was so glad that you put this series inside of there, because it gave me a chance to read something that I probably wouldn't have picked up myself. And so here we go. The story actually takes place right after the Shadowland series. That's kind of where I really stopped liking Andy Diggle's take on Daredevil. I didn't like the whole Shadowland storyline. Matt Murdock becoming head of the hand and being possessed by the beast of the hand and all that type of stuff just wasn't for me. I didn't like the way he characterized Matt Murdock. And so I just, it's one of those runs on Daredevil that unfortunately just was something I didn't like very much. And so, but at the end of that series, you have Matt being brought to a place of kind of being undone. He's riddled by guilt, of course. You got to throw some healthy guilt in with Matt Murdock. But basically, he became head of the hand. He turned his back on all his friends. He basically did the same to all his superhero allies. He killed Bullseye. And so when the whole Shadowland storyline is over with, he doesn't know himself anymore. And he basically leaves being Daredevil behind and leaves New York. And so that's where we find Matt. He's on the road, and we basically find him in, of all places, New Mexico. And he goes to this diner, and he sees a blind kid there who's being bullied. This is one of my favorite parts of the story, because in the midst of this kid being bullied, he doesn't teach him how to fight, but he teaches him the internal stuff that you have to know as far as being somebody who's handicapped. And really starts to bolster this kid's confidence and basically show him he's not alone out there. Awesome part of the story. But as we go along, we find out that the cops, because he's new in town, they don't want somebody new there. There's something very sinister going on, and they try to run him out of town. And Matt, being the curious guy that he is, and being, our hero, he can't let that lay. He's got to go investigate it. And sure enough, what he finds out is that there's a quote-unquote villain in town who is has a drug, not a drug smuggling ring, but a gun smuggling ring. And of course, Matt foils it, and we get this awesome, fight scene in the end where he puts the black togs on. But through helping out this boy and through solving this crime, he basically, in so many words, finds himself again and heads back to New York to take on the mantle of Daredevil. And that's pretty much the story. So one of the things I wanted to point out is the artwork inside of this book, done by David Galifianakis. This was really well done. I was really surprised by it. It's really nuanced. It really has a nice pace to it. And the colors by Matt Hollingsworth really complements it. I think they're a good team when it comes to that. It really captured Daredevil, while it's really not being a Daredevil story. Some of the small action scenes that we've seen that Matt Murdock gets into, you can fully see Daredevil in the poses that he brings. So I just loved all that. And so the artwork was something that I really enjoyed in this book. The writing actually from Andy Diggle was not bad. It was a pretty good read. I think my biggest problem with it is the end of the storyline. You have this huge thing that happens in Shadowland, which breaks Matt Murdock down, and so he leaves town, and then we find him in New Mexico, and through this helping of the boy and breaking up this drug smuggling ring, all of a sudden he finds himself again, and Daredevil's reborn. He's going back to New York. It kind of felt like a kid who's having a temper tantrum, says, I'm not doing this anymore, and he goes to the end of the block, and he's there for 5 minutes and then comes back and says, I'm okay now. And that's the way it felt. So the ending of the story and the end result kind of felt trite. If you're gonna have Matt Murdock broke down that way and leave New York and leave Daredevil behind, I'd rather see it. I'd rather see the writer earn him, becoming Daredevil again, and that just didn't happen. So, like I said, it was just kind of trite the way the story ended up. But all in all, it was a really good read. I'm really happy that I did finally get to check it out and enjoy it. Two Gun Pedro, thank you very much. Without you, I would have probably never picked up the book. So there you go. Daredevil Reborn was published way back in 2011, and it was a good read. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, the coffee that I'm drinking today, which I've pretty much halfway already consumed, is a cold brew from the fantastic Refuge coffee shop. Like I said last week, I've really missed their brew, and I'm enjoying another one today. So there you have it. Now my next book is Dark Reign, Hawkeye by Marvel Comics. This was released between May and July of 2009. The first 4 issues were, and then the last issue, the 5th issue, was actually released in January of 2010. Not sure why the split, but when I was doing the research on this book, I did notice that. This one is also written by Andy Diggle, artwork by Tom Randy, and the colors are done by Dave Sharp. Now, I didn't have very high expectations for this book, but I was very pleasantly surprised about how much I like this. Maybe it's because I'm such a huge Bullseye fan, that may have something to do with it, but I think Andy Diggle did a really good job in capturing the essence of who Bullseye is and what I would like to see from a Bullseye book. I'll still contend that a definitive Bullseye story has not been written yet, what I would consider his opus, but there's a lot of good material out there, and I would consider this one of them. Now, so the story revolves around the Dark Avengers. Norman Osborn, after the Secret Invasion storyline, is in a position to be in power, and because the mistrust in the Avengers after the whole crisis happens, he's in a position to create his own Avengers team, and he does that. And he basically, like you see inside of the Thunderbolts, a la Suicide Squad type, where you're taking villains and making them heroes, he creates an Avengers team that looks like the Avengers, but is actually not. And so the Hawkeye on the team is actually our character Bullseye. To the rest of the world, he looks like Hawkeye. He doesn't want anybody knowing that it's Bullseye in that costume. And but that's basically where the story is revolving around. And we have, I think the main crux of the story is that you have one of the most diabolical assassins of all time, somebody who just enjoys killing. And you have Norman Osborn, who thinks he's going to keep Bullseye on a leash, and Bullseye basically is going to show him in no uncertain terms, you don't own me, you don't control me. The way he does it is a lot of fun. There's a lot of killing behind the scenes, and it just the type of hijinks and villainy that I want to see out of the Bullseye character was really displayed inside of this book. Then Bullseye starts seeing versions of himself around the city. Now he's dressed up as Hawkeye, but he's seeing Bullseye come on the scene and take out people. Number one, that makes him mad because he can't take credit for those kills, which I thought was great. That's because that's totally spot on the way he would be. But the second thing is that he knows he's Bullseye, who's posing as him doing these kills. And he starts to see these bullseyes all over the place, and he starts to think he's going mad. And what it turns out to be is actually his dad trying to bring him down and break him down so that he can produce this, not an experiment, but basically produce a, he's basically going to take his own brain and consciousness and put it in his son Bullseye, basically killing Lester so that he can live longer, because, you know, he's been resigned to a wheelchair and he's all messed up. Of course, Lester messed him up huge in a past storyline, and so this is kind of his revenge. Of course, that doesn't work. Lester, you know, he figures it out, breaks out, kills everybody, and in the very last panel basically watches his dad die, and it ties it up very nicely. I had so much fun reading this. It was, like I said, it had everything that I want to see out of a Bullseye story. One of the things that, you know, you should always get with the Bullseye character is that you can't just sit around him and not feel on complete edge, because he enjoys killing and he'll do it at the drop of a hat, and he doesn't care who he does it to. I think one of the best versions of the Bullseye character happened in Ed Brubaker's run on Daredevil, where Matt Murdock is inside a prison and he can hear, you know, all the cacophony of all the conversations that are going on inside of the prison, and in one particular moment the whole prison hushes, and that's when Matt knows he's here. That's right, they had just brought Lester into the prison, Bullseye was in the prison, and the whole prison, the most hardened of hardened men, all hushed in that moment, because now they got something to be afraid of. That's the type of presence that Bullseye should bring wherever he goes, because you never know who he's going to kill, and it can always be you. This is captured inside of that book, and so that's why I think I enjoyed it so much. Just a lot of fun. So one of the things I want to say is the artwork inside of this book was glorious. Oh man, I really dug the artist. What is his name? Tom Randy. I've never really noticed his work before. Again, he was probably in the game, you know, during my huge break that I was away from comics. But I really enjoyed the artwork for this. It really worked. The colors were amazing. That was another thing. Dave Sharp really brought vibrant colors, and but that's where the book kind of breaks down. As much as I enjoyed the artwork, it didn't go with the type of story that it is. If you see, I'll be putting images up on the screen. If you see the way the artwork is in this book, and the colors is very vibrant. It's something that you'd get out of an awesome Spider-Man book or an awesome Avengers book. But this doesn't match up with the gritty violence and death that is happening inside of this book. And I don't know, maybe they were trying to use that as a vehicle because, you know, he's portraying Hawkeye, but basically he is Bullseye. And so maybe they're trying to use the artwork as a vehicle. I don't know, but it just didn't meld because of that reason. And it's not a ding on it, but it is something that I did notice, and it is something that did bother me. The writing I thought was really well done. Like I said, I think Andy Diggle really captured the character well. And so I really enjoyed this book. I was pleasantly surprised by it. Definitely one you should definitely check out. And my last book that I'm reviewing this week, and oh man, where was this book all my life? This week I was watching Sleepy Readers videos, and he showed a book that reminded me of something that was on my backlist of things to read for a while. way back when I had heard a podcast by Geek History Lesson, and they talked about this line of comics called The Sixth Gun. Never read it before, but the review of it kind of intrigued me. And then Sleepy Reader, on his video this week, he showed that he got one of the larger volumes of The Sixth Gun, and I'm like, I want to read that. So checked it out. It's on Comixology. Most of it is actually there for free for the taking, and so I started reading it this week. Oh man, I loved this book. So this is The Sixth Gun, put out by Oni Press. It was released between May of 2010 and June of 2016. It was written by Cullen Bunn. Art is done by Brian Hurt. And holy Toledo, like I said, where has this been all my life? Now, the story revolves around two main characters. You have Drake Sinclair, who's an anti-hero, a gunslinger. And he's trying to find these 6 magical guns that are imbued with supernatural powers. And I mean, these guns are incredible. Each gun belongs to a single owner who is kind of soul tied to that gun. And whenever the owner dies, the next person that touches that gun, they're now the caretaker of that gun until their death. Really, really well done. Now, you guys know me. I don't normally go in for the supernatural stuff. I don't really read anything that's blasphemous. I don't read anything that has real occult iconography inside of it. I just won't do it. But this was a great story that didn't have any of that in it, but had all the elements of what makes a good, like, dark fantasy story. Now, these guns, the way they explain it, each one has a different power. One of them basically fires with the blast of a cannon. Another one releases pestilence. Another one releases, like wrathful fire. And then one of them imbues youth and healing. Then I think the sixth gun itself allows you to be able to see the past and the future. And so much fun reading this and reading about how this world unfolds. Now, those guns in the beginning are owned by this great cast of characters. They kind of look like the four horsemen, and these are part of the antagonists of the story. But I would say the real antagonists are the Humes. You have General Hume, who was a great Civil War general, and he's kind of undead. He's got chains. He's in a coffin when you first see him. And then his wife, who's youthful, who has that 5th gun that can imbue healing and long life. And I don't know which one is more vicious, but I think she is probably the scarier of the two. Anyway, great villains of the story. And then the last protagonist of the story is Becky Moncrief. And it's her grandfather, I think it's her grandfather, father, anyway, who has that 6th gun, who basically was able to get it from General Hume and put him in a grave, and then that grave be surrounded on holy ground so that he can never come back again. And that's what happens in the beginning of the book. He dies, she touches the gun, and now she has that gun, and of course everybody is coming for it. That's kind of how the story begins. That's how it revolves, and it just goes on from there. I have to say, it's very rare that I'll pick up a comic book and I'll just keep reading because I don't want to stop. That's how this comic book was. Sleepy Reader talked about some writers inside of comic books having a good rhythm, having a good flow, timing, and that's how this read. Cullen Bunn, I think, is masterful at this beautiful rhythm inside of the story. Some of your best stories are ones where you're invited into a world that you've never been in before, and the more you get of it, the more you want. And a good writer keeps you, not giving you everything, but just a little bit more and a little bit more, so you keep wanting more. And that's the way this was. The more I read about this world I've never been in before, the more I wanted it. I liken it to great movies like The Godfather. The Godfather invited you into the underworld of the Coast Cosa Nostra. Nobody had ever really seen it before, and it was electrifying. And the more you watched that movie and the more you delved into that world, the more you wanted to know. And it actually informed gangsters in the day. Most gangsters didn't know how to act until they watched that movie. But this is the same type of thing inside of The Sixth Gun. It really draws you in, really keeps you wanting more, and the pace with which he writes it, it was just so well done. There's about 60 to 70 books, individual floppy comic books in the series. I started this 2 days ago, and I'm already 35 comic books in. So I haven't finished it, but I plowed through 35 of the comic. I'm like halfway through the series already because it was that well done. And then the artwork. The artwork is really good. Now, I'm not going to say that there is a single panel or page where you're going to say that's the best thing I've ever seen. But again, the way the way Brian Hurt compliments Cullen Bunn inside of this is great, because he keeps the flow going, as much as it feels like old school comic book composition, but at the same time he brings a creepiness to it that you need in this type of story. It was just, I think the team up between those two guys are very well done, between writer and artist. If you guys have not picked up the story before, I would invite you to definitely check it out. It has been definitely for during my downtime some of the best reading that I've checked out yet, and it just I can't praise it enough. And don't know why I was never able. I didn't even know about it. So I'm so glad Sleepy Reader did that video this week, because it prompted me to go check it out. And wow, what a treat. And so definitely you want to check this out. You can get the first 4 volumes, which I think is the first 24 books, on Comixology for free. If you have a premium account on Comixology, you can get the first 4 volumes. It's all there. And I got to the end of the 4th volume, and I just bought the rest of them because it was just that good. And so there we go. That's my review. Sixth Gun, if you haven't checked it out, that's one I definitely recommend. I am definitely going to go out and buy the premium hardcover editions, because this is just such a well done comic. Thank you very much for showing me that this week, Sleepy Reader. And so that basically it. That's my reviews for the week, folks. Here, ending the end of the show, I want to show you my panel of the week. And this one came out of Hawkeye, or the Dark Reign Hawkeye, issue number 3. And I really like this picture because something about it reminded me of the Matrix. And you'll see what I'm talking about. But it comes at the very end of the book, and you see Hawkeye surrounded by bullseyes. I thought it was a great panel. You know, it's nothing to write home about, but it made me geek out. And if you can have a page that geeks me out, I'm all for it. So that's my panel of the week, folks. Hope you enjoyed that one. So again, next week, folks, I know one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is we got New Comic Book Day is back. That's right. And I'm so looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it too. I'm probably going to review more older stuff that I'm reading, because just looking at the list of what's coming out next week, there's not a lot there that I'm probably going to be buying, because they're not books that I was reading before, and I'm not one to have to go back and catch up on everything just to review a book. I won't do that. But it's okay. I'm still gonna do some reviews. I'll review some of the stuff that I've been reading. I'll let you know what I think about Oblivion Song, because I read that during the downtime. I read the whole Jonathan Hickman Fantastic Four and Future Foundation run. I plowed through the whole thing. That was another one I'll be reviewing next week, and maybe a couple others. But hey, what have you been reading during the pandemic? I'd love to hear that. And you know, during this downtime, you do anything you can to, you know, to not be bored. And I've been doing a lot of reading on some back comic book issues. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed being back here with me at the Refuge Coffee House. Again, check out their website. It's down in the description. They got stuff for sale. If you can, if there's something you like, please do me a favor and buy something from them. It definitely goes to help out keeping the place open and keeping the lights on here. And I know that they would definitely appreciate that. So there you go, folks. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Again, you know how I end this. Always support your local comic shop. And remember, folks, always, 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 Excelsior. Take care.
Continue to debate whether Logan's claws could pierce Steve Rogers' shield.